What's going on, everyone? I'm Sage, and in this video, I wanted to go over the Druid tree itself. They have a revamp coming in 10.0.5 that they've added some new abilities. They've done some different node connections. They've reduced the amount of points you need for certain abilities, and I wanted to go over it and tell you my opinions and thoughts about it. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So on this blue post, they've done a couple of different tuning changes in total. If you're looking for the feral one, there will be a video right after this one that's going to go over the feral tree and my opinions and thoughts about that one as well. So jumping into the druid one itself, the initial tuning is all druids will learn swipe at level 10. Swipe and brutal slash damage has been reduced by 50%, and the reason why is because they're going to be giving us improved swipe instead of swipe itself. They're going to give us something that modifies it, and anything that modifies swipe is obviously going to modify brutal slash. So if they're going to give us that damage buff inside the talent tree, then they need to offset it baseline, which is why inside data mining, you'll see that they've nerfed those two abilities to compensate for the buff that they're going to give it. Moving on down, they changed Killer Instincts. They changed it to 2 points, granting 3 and 6% physical damage and armor, which is phenomenal. One of the big concerns we had in the Druid community was we were one of the main people left with 3 point choices in our class tree, which they've changed that for the majority of the part, right? Killer Instincts is now 2, which gives us less points that we have to spend to get down that tree. Feral Druids are always going to take this, so they're just giving us a free point at this point with that, no pun intended, which is great. It's phenomenal. Nurturing Instincts as well has been changed to 2 points, granting 3 and then 6 magical damage and healing. This is also something that we would take if we were using the Lunar Inspiration build, which is very much a possibility with the build that they have. And tune into my video that comes out after this one to talk about how that impacts Feral Druid. But going down, we have a new talent called Improved Swipe, which we were just talking about. Increases swipe and brutal slash damage by 100%, restoring the 10.0.2 value. So they're just negating it, right? They're just putting in a new talent because it felt weird that everybody didn't already have swipe, is what they're saying, that you had to spec into swipe, and so they're giving it back to everyone baseline, and then this is just a damage amp up of the ability instead of having to spec into that side of the tree in order to even have swipe. A new talent in row 8 called Forest Walk. It's 2 points. Casting regrowth increases your movement speed and healing received by 5%, and putting 2 points in it only increases the amount of seconds. So it starts off with 3 seconds for 1 point and 6 seconds for the next. This is actually very nice because it gives us a lot more tankiness because you're getting 5% increased healing. Currently on live with Grievous and Bursting, this would actually be really, really nice to have, as well as increased movement speed is always a great thing to have. We have a new talent called Gale Winds. Increases Typhoon's radius by 20% and range by 5, uh, which is great. Typhoon, one of the biggest issues I have with Typhoon, especially as Feral in Melee, is that when you're trying to knock something away as it's coming in, sometimes you'll hit Typhoon and you just weren't close enough. You just, by a little bit, you just weren't close enough, right? Because you just want to turn around and knock it further away and then keep damaging it. You don't want to have to run away from the boss to go knock it and then come back to the boss. And the increased range is huge. They also added a switch talent with this one where you can, instead of getting the 20% radius and 5 yards range on it, you can instead just reduce the cooldown of Typhoon by 5 seconds. Typhoon's only 30 seconds baseline when you talent into it, so I don't think that this one's nearly as strong as the previous one, so I would go with Gale Winds myself because the increased radius and the increased yards are just better than 5 seconds. Feline Swiftness icon changed, which it just shows kind of like our dash icon. Matted Fur icon changed. Doesn't really matter. New connections throughout the tree. They did add several new connections, which we'll go over when we go into the tree, the talent calculator. Sunfire was moved up, and Star Surge moved to the side. Wild Growth was moved up, and Remove Curse was moved to the side. And then Feral Druids now start with Rip instead of Thrash. So now let's jump over to the talent calculator. So on the talent calculator here, um, obviously what they were talking about, we start off with Rake and Rip instead of Rake and Thrash. Honestly, I don't think it matters because you're going to get those points anyway, right? As we go down here, we did gain a point from Killer Instincts because instead of it being 3 points, it's 2 points now, as well as they did add us some connectors here where Skull Bash, we can go into Primal Fury now instead. Without having to take Feline Swiftness if you didn't want to. So you could reduce those 2 points, you would lose out on your speed, your 15% movement speed, but you would still gain your Primal Fury, which is mandatory for Feral Druids. Kind of don't have a choice in that matter. You do definitely need this. However, this connector over here is huge for us because Matted Fur was always blocked behind Thick Hide, and Thick Hide is blocked behind Iron Fur. I do kind of wish that they would have added something else here, which would have been awesome, but you know, we take what we can get. We got Matted Fur here, which is 1 point spend for a decent absorption shield whenever you Barkskin or Survival Instincts. Survival Instincts is something that is going to be taken 100% of the time now in the new tree. And once again, check out my next video to go over where and why that's a thing. Also, going down the tree here, the other thing that they've added was our Forest Walk right here on the side, which is 2 points, which you do have the points to do this now since they've given us our points back. Up here on the top, you always take 3 points no matter what, right here. If you need remove corruption, only if you need it. And there's a few dungeons where you do absolutely need this. Temple of the Jade Serpent is definitely one of them. Shadow Moon Burial Grounds and Algathars are the ones that really pop out for this current season 1. Algathars for the tree boss. Shadow Moon Burial Grounds is for the bats, as well as there's a couple other things that put poisons out there. And then you have a ton of curses that go out in Temple of the Jade Serpent. Especially the trash towards the third boss and the last boss. Give curses out. So you only need to put the points in here when you need it. However, it was 3 points prior to the changes, and it's still 3 points now, so it doesn't really change up anything with their positioning. On the right-hand side here, going in the Boomy side, we have to take this because we need Astral Influence, as well as our way to get to Typhoon, Ursol's Vortex, Innervate, Nature's Vigil. And so what they did is they just put Star Surge off to the side where Ferals aren't just going to get that one baseline anymore. And instead, we get Sunfire pretty much guaranteed now 100% of the time, even though we were taking that previously. But now with this current build, we're probably not going to be taking, or we don't need to take it in the sense of where they placed it because they swapped it where Sunfire was down here where they put Improved Sunfire, and Improved Sunfire was off on the end, right? We didn't need to take Improved Sunfire ever. And now we could just go down for less points spent in order to get down here. However, Typhoon is very, very strong utility button, especially in dungeons for us. So I recommend it, especially the week that's coming up. On live, we're going to take Typhoon. Obviously, we're not going to have the modification talents for it, but when you have things like Sanguine, when you have stuff interrupting, when you have stuff that's getting inside the way, when tanks are kiting, Typhoon is a phenomenal ability to give space as well as to just reduce the speed of everything. And AoE slow that also knocks back is phenomenal. Inside this tree, however, instead of having to take a point in something we're just not going to use because you're not owl leaving in AoE, our AoE is very, very strong. So you're not trying to put Sunfire out there or AoE Sunfire. But if you were, this is actually a better build for it now if we were to ever actually start doing that at some point. Hopefully not. I don't want to, and I'm pretty sure most of the people watching this video don't want to. But if we did have to do it, at least it's a little bit better as far as pathing. But Typhoon and then Gale Wind and Incessant Tempest are both great additions. Gale Winds is definitely by far better in my opinion, and that allows us to get down the tree in the way that we want to. But currently, you have a few more points. All right, we have to get 2 more points here and spend those points in order to get down the tree. And we could just try to go for our Remove Corruption, just maintain that utility, but we're already gaining a little bit additional utility with Hibernate because we had to spend 1 more additional point up here because we got it from Killer Instincts. That 1 point can go into Nurturing Instincts, but if you're not taking an AoE, if you're not going to be taking your Lunar Inspiration, which is currently at the bottom of the new Feral Tree, which, once again, stay tuned to my next video for the Feral Druid Tree changes. But if you're not taking that, then this isn't really necessary to do. It does give you increased healing, though, and it's going to give you a small damage increase if you're taking, like, Convoke inside your AoE build, because Convoke is going to Moonfire no matter what, pretty much. So it could give you a small damage increase, but it will give you a healing increase, or you can just gain more utility. This Hibernate is very good for things like the mini boss in Court of Stars that you do when you find the imposter. It's just like Season 4 affix where bats come out and you have to stop the bats. Hibernate will 100% stop all those bats. So it's a great thing for those. There are a few little niche things that you can do with Hibernate inside Court of Stars because there you have those little like Hellhound dogs and stuff like that too. But Dragonkin, Dragonkin's actually kind of a big one here because Azure Vault is pretty much all Dragonkin. So if you needed to CC something or stop it from casting, Hibernate is phenomenal there. Um, there are some things that you don't typically want to try to hibernate though, like that little ad that comes off on the second boss in Azure Vaults. Technically, yes, you could, but you don't want to CC it. You just want to interrupt that thing and kill it. Too many people try to CC it or para it and stuff like that, unless you're about to kill the boss. If you're about to kill the boss and you're like, you know what, ignore the ad, let me hibernate it, let me para it or whatever, um, then that's a fine choice. But we took the hibernate, and now we're looking at the points. I still think take feline swiftness, uh, get that increased speed, even though now you don't technically have to. Speed is great. Speed is very, very good. You can obviously, instead of going with speed, you can go into some tankiness, which is always an option as well to get the thick hide. On live currently, I do have thick hide at the sacrifice of some of the utility on the right hand side of the tree because things hurt right now. Like everybody's still working on getting geared, and we're trying to do 20s, and doing anything from 18 to 20 very much hurts. So going full tank build where you're going complete on this side as well as you're taking improved bark skin is huge. Um, and will probably still be huge later on down the road as well. But you can just go into, for most builds, you can go into feline swiftness. Then we're going to go down here and take Lycara's teachings because stats are the most damage gain as most of the stuff you have on this tree that you're going to commit points to outside of like your basic mandatory abilities and probably killer instincts. Um, and then your biggest defensive is going to be Well-Honed Instincts. Well-Honed Instincts saves my life so many times currently on live. I put 2 points into it because, once again, everything hurts. As well as Renewal. Renewal this week on live for Grievous and Bursting is saved my life several times, more times than I can count currently. Um, but now we're looking at it. We still have a significant amount of points. We still have 5 points to spend at this point, and you can go into a lot of different things. You can go into the increased healing done and or healing received, as well as increase your movement speed by an additional 5%. We're always going to have predatory swiftness, which allows us to get free regrowth out, which allows us to just literally have regrowth on ourselves 100% of the time if we wanted to, and that's just going to improve our survivability. And the only times you're mainly pressing regrowth is when you want that survivability anyway. And this is just going to amplify that. So I would say taking at least 1 point in it is always going to be a good defensive because you're just going to get increased healing when you need it, right? Because you're going to press it, you're going to regrowth yourself when you need it. And this is just going to always be there as an additional, even if you're just putting the 1 point in it. Improved Stampede and Roar is actually phenomenal. It's great to always be able to amp up your entire group by 60% every 1 minute. Is it mandatory in dungeons? No. But it is very nice to have because you don't need it every 60 seconds because there's a lot of times you're just chain pulling and you don't need to go fast when you're chain pulling things. But if you go and roar your tank so he can go pick up everything, and then when you're done with that pack, you're able to roar everybody to go to the next spot, phenomenal stuff. Currently, bursting with dragon riding, like in No Code, bursting stops you from getting on your dragon. So sometimes when you're just going from ballista to ballista, where you just wanted to mount up on your dragon and hop right over to the next one, instead you kind of can't because bursting stops you from getting on your dragon sometimes. You can just roar everybody to the next ballista. And then coming over here, Your Soul's Vortex is definitely the go-to. It's so phenomenal because pairing up Your Soul's Vortex with a Typhoon allows you to not only properly stack everything, but allows you to get a mass AoE interrupt on everything and get everything funneled into one location. So placing your Soul's Vortex down on a pack and then typhooning it to interrupt it, then dropping it all back in is phenomenal. As well as like in Halls of Valor, you have all of those hunters that leap away. You can Soul's Vortex all of them, and like there's a 4-pack right before Fenrir. If you're going to do that pack, there's 2 hunters there. Throw your Soul's Vortex down. As soon as they start jumping away, they get snapped right back in. Increases damage because everything is maintaining stacks. You're cleaving correctly, all that kind of stuff. Your Soul's Vortex is phenomenal for Feral Druids, for Guardian, everybody. As well as a huge tip is on the last boss in Temple of the Jade Serpent. When you're about to get all your shadow clones out, if you put a vortex right underneath the boss and everybody just stands in it, all of your shadows will just clump up right in the center because vortex will just grip them all right into the center, and then you just sit there and you AoE stun them and burn them all down right on top of the boss, and it makes that phase extremely simple, especially if you have a Windwalker monk where you can just grip them all in. Everybody does you get a leg sweep on them that stuns them. You can disorienting roar them. You can fell nova, all that kind of AoE stops on them, and then a Windwalker can pretty much just touch death all of them very quickly, which is phenomenal for that end boss, because those guys do truck, especially if they're trucking after your healer. So your healer is always the prio one to kill in that scenario. I'm just going to throw that out there. Always kill your healer's shade first, and then kill everybody else's. Um, but anyway, now we still have 2 points, which allows us to just jump right on down here, which this is a very cool tree. It's very optimized tree. Obviously, it's not remove corruption. So if you need to remove corruption, you'd have to remove some points in order to get it, which you're mainly going to move like Forest Walk. You can remove your speed this time instead, but typically if you need this up here, you're going to remove some defensive or some utility down here, right? So you need 3 points, so it could be these three, could be 2 points here and just one, where you just lose out your speed. But more than likely, you would lose out Stampeding Roar, Matted Fur, and probably Forest Walk. And then you take these three abilities if you need to remove corruption. Um, all in all, I think this is a phenomenal change to the tree. I like the ability that they've added with Forest Walk and Gale Winds as well as Incessant Tempest. The connection nodes are great too. Specifically, this one down here is phenomenal, as well as the reduction in ability here. Up here at the top, it's not as important. Because like you still have to spend a point up here somewhere, and there's not like anything that's like 1 point's going to get you a massive additional, at least for feral. That is, I'm sure with Guardian as well as for all the other specs, to be honest. I'm pretty sure that there's 1 point that they can grab somewhere else that would be beneficial. But having Hibernate's not horrible. Like I said, if you wanted to take this off and put 1 point to Nurturing Instincts, you get a little, very, very, very little bit amount of damage out of it and some healing. Or you just block it and you still put the 1 point into Iron Fur. That way later on you can take your 2 points into Thick Hide and get that 6% DR, which is also huge. Um, in total, I think it's phenomenal changes. I think we're moving in the right direction. This definitely helps out all druids. For feral, the Forest Walk is super strong. I think that's very, very good for us because we're the class that can do it for free. There is a talent for Guardian Druids to be able to do that as well, but we're actually going to take the talent that allows us to use this as an instant cast anyway. Um, it's also going to be obviously very strong for Resto Druids. Boomy's only going to do it when they absolutely have to because it's a cast for them. But I think for Feral and for Resto Druids, it's phenomenal amount of increased healing received on themselves. Um, and yeah, I'm excited about everything, but this typically is probably going to be like my main build for everything. And like I said, if I need to go more tanky, the Hibernate would come over here, and I'd probably lose out on maybe improve Stampeding Roar, maybe 1 point of Feline Swiftness to get Thick Hide. That way you still have the 8% plus the 5% over here, so you're not losing out a ton of movement speed, but you're gaining a ton of tankiness with the 6% DR. And that is my thoughts on this. So, you know, let me know what you guys think about this new Druid tree. And like I said, right after this, I'm going to do another video going over Feral Druid's talent tree, its reworks, its changes, its nerfs and buffs, and so on and so forth. So stay tuned for that. Um, I know I've said in several of my videos that at the start of Dragonflight, I would be streaming significantly more, and I was very, very trying to. I was trying very hard to do that. I ran into some technical difficulties where my computer was not allowing me to perform in Raid. Something was happening. But I have done several different adjustments and changes to my setup to fix that. So it seems like it's fixed that currently. So I will be streaming more over at twitch.tv/sageshifter if you guys want to check that out for keys. Currently, we're a little over 2300 IO. We are getting 18s and 19s done. 20 is still something we're trying to scratch for, but 20s are very hard. Even the 19 was very, very hard. 18s I can manage pretty decently, and we're just getting more and more gear that will even out all of that stuff. And I will have a video coming out going over my progression in Raid. I've gotten several of the rank ones during my progression. Obviously, the stuff changes as more people do those fights. But I have gotten a lot of 100% parses, a lot of rank ones, as well as just good damage parses and profiles. So I want to go over all of that and what I've been using on each boss in future videos. So stay tuned for all of that. If you guys like this video, like and subscribe. And thank you guys all again, once again, for supporting the channel. getting up and over 1,000 subscribers is phenomenal, and thank you all very, very much for that. It makes me very happy to do this, and I'm going to try to make sure I spend more time getting out those videos and making them shorter. I talk a lot, so I'm going to end this video here, and hope you guys enjoy. All right, see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.